Israel is in crisis. Despite the bravado of an elite which has committed genocide and is committing genocide, this is a state in crisis, in turmoil. Indeed, the genocide will end up one day, in my view, spelling the end of the entire ethno nationalist, ethno supremacist project. Now, we've got a lot of important things to talk about here. Yesterday, the Israeli government unanimously voted to fire the state's Attorney General, Gali Baharav Miara. This is because of corruption allegations against the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who is himself, of course, subject to an arrest warrant issued by the International Criminal Court for war crimes and crimes against humanity. These allegations in Israel center on bribery, on fraud, on breach of trust, attempting to secure favorable media coverage. These allegations date back several years, and there is supposed to be a process there, well, put the guy on trial. There's also allegations centered on his advisors with claims of illicit payments from Qatar. Netanyahu has responded in typical demagogic fashion, claiming there's a left-wing deep state conspiracy against him. He's managed to drag out the trial he faces and indeed has used the genocidal onslaught against the Palestinian people of Gaza for those purposes, as well as all the other wars of aggression he's been waging. The broader context is a previous attempt to reduce the power of the judiciary, which triggered a constitutional crisis. Now, Israel's not a democracy. It's an ethnocracy. It subjects Palestinians to a brutal occupation, depriving them of basic rights. But this represented a shift towards naked authoritarianism, even on its own terms. Now, before I discuss the further elements of Israel's crisis and the hideously new unveiled plans for Gaza, there is this argument that Israel's onslaught on Gaza has been dragged out in the interest of Netanyahu's survival. Now, last month, the New York Times, which has been guilty itself of dire coverage of the genocide, had a story headlined How Netanyahu Prolonged the War in Gaza to Stay in Power. It discussed how in April 2024, there's a proposal which could have created a window for negotiations with Hamas over a permanent truce, allowing for the release of hostages. The New York Times added that the devastation of Gaza, where roughly 2 million people were trying to survive daily attacks, could have come to a halt. But this would have meant losing the support of far-right ministers who wanted to occupy and colonize Gaza. And if they collapsed the ruling coalition, then Netanyahu would lose the elections and be forced to stand trial for corruption. As a result, the proposal died a death and the genocidal slaughter continued. This all needs a heavy caveat. For some of Israel's cheerleaders, the strategy has been make Netanyahu the convenient bogeyman in order to protect Israel. The argument here is this historic crime is because of a bad man in power in Israel, rather than focusing on where settler colonialism inevitably leads. But this is dishonest. The Israeli opposition has backed Israel's genocidal onslaught from day one, and so is the overwhelming majority of the Israeli public, with polls showing that most Jewish citizens of Israel, as opposed to the 20% who are Palestinian citizens, support everything from mass destruction to deliberate starvation. The main opposition leader, Yair Lapid, himself a former prime minister, here's what he said over a month into the genocide.
The majority of people who were killed were Hamas terrorists. People are saying this number, 12,000 people were killed. Yes, the Hamas is an army of 40,000 people, and many of them were killed, and good riddance.